What's going on, football fans? It's your host, Bad Takes, with Bad Takes in Football, back with another video for you. Gonna dive into the top 5 free agents going into the NFL offseason. But before I do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're building an awesome community here where we talk everything NFL football. I got plenty of exciting content coming to you this offseason, so please hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to like and comment on this video. Who do you think the top free agent is, and where should they go? Let's dive into today's video. So here we are. The Super Bowl has happened. The Seattle Seahawks have been crowned Super Bowl champions, and we have 7 months until the next NFL regular season football game. But don't worry about that. We're now hopping into the offseason and all the exciting factors that go into that. And today's topic is free agency. I wanted to go into the top 5 free agents based off of PFF scores and where I think they will find a new home, or if they're staying with their current team and are signing to a big deal. Number 1 on that list is a really interesting free agent. I'm talking about Trey Hendrickson, the defensive end for the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a lot of reasons why this is a very interesting free agent market, especially for Trey Hendrickson. Number 1 being he tried so hard to get a long-term deal last year with the Cincinnati Bengals. He held out, he requested a trade. What ended up happening was he got a 1-year, basically a $30 million deal in order to play for the Bengals. And he only played in 7 games last year and totaled 4 sacks on the season. So this was definitely a down year for Trey Hendrickson. And that's why this is an interesting one, because there's a lot of important factors when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. Not only the back injury that he was facing throughout this season, and again, only allowed him to play in 7 games, but Trey Hendrickson is going to be 31 going into next regular season. And so he is essentially on the other side of the hill when it comes to your football peak, especially when it comes to, I would say, specialist positions like defensive end. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks last year. And again, this was a down year. He tried so hard to get a long-term contract. And so I'm really wondering and curious to see what the market ends up looking like for Trey Hendrickson. I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to be getting a 5-year, $40 million plus deal anymore. I think that ship has sailed for Trey Hendrickson. I think he's going to be more likely to get a 2 or 3-year deal, maybe a high salary number, maybe again close to that $30 million mark. But again, I also don't think that he's going to be able to hit that anymore. If he had a great year this year, maybe that would have been possible. But he's 31 years old. If the Bengals don't value him the way he expected it, I'm really going to struggle to believe that another team is going to value him that high. Because again, he did request a trade, and the Bengals were listening to trades apparently. And nothing happened, which tells me there wasn't a lot of suitors, and there wasn't probably a lot of teams willing to give up a lot to get Trey Hendrickson. So now in free agency, you have to ask yourself, who is going to want Trey Hendrickson, and how much are they willing to give Trey Hendrickson? I think that he would be a good fit for a couple different teams. Number 1 team I can think of is the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a terrible defense. He was essentially the cornerstone of that defense up until this past year where he had that injury. So the Bengals are a very easy, viable option. But also at the same time, that ship might have sailed. That relationship might be over. The other two teams that I think Trey Hendrickson could be a good fit for is actually one of the Super Bowl teams that we saw this past week, and I'm talking about the New England Patriots. They had 1 sack in that game against the Seattle Seahawks, and getting sacks was a major issue for this Patriots team. The Patriots' leading sack getter had 3 sacks on the year. That is terrible numbers for a pass rushing specialist. You need to be at least getting in the 7, 8, 9 sacks a game to really even be considered a pass rushing specialist or an edge rusher and be considered a top of the line one. And so Trey Hendrickson could add a lot of value to that New England Patriots team that clearly need a little bit of help from a pass rushing perspective. The last team that I think he would actually be a good fit for is actually within the AFC North. He would be a good fit for the Baltimore Ravens. Their pass rush took a really big hit this past season when Nnamdi Madubuike went down with a neck injury. We're still unsure if Nnamdi Madubuike is even going to be able to come back. He's a defensive tackle, but still was a huge part of the pass rush for the Ravens. They gave away, or traded away, I should say, Adafe Owe to the Chargers, where I think he ended up getting 7 or 8 sacks on the season. Kyle Van Noy is getting older. David Ajabo has never really come out to be much for this Baltimore Ravens team. And then you have a young Mike Green. And so Trey Hendrickson actually makes a lot of sense to go to the Baltimore Ravens. And I really do think they could get him on a pretty good deal because, again, he is 31 years old. He's coming off of an injury in what I would consider to be a bad year, even though it was because of an injury. And so he actually might be a lot cheaper on the market than a lot of people might think, considering the fact he is the number 1 rated free agent. The number 2 free agent, based off of PFF scores, is George Pickens, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a really interesting one because I'm really unsure if the Cowboys have the ability to sign George Pickens. They struggled mightily in the negotiations with a Micah Parsons, and their defense, it has shown a little bit of improvement. And so you have to wonder, are they really willing to pay a wide receiver where they already have a lot of money in CD Lamb and a lot of money in quarterback Dak Prescott? And so again, are you willing to pay CD Lamb, or are you willing to pay, I should say, are you willing to pay George Pickens, who is essentially your number 2 option, even though he is a number 1 type wide receiver? George Pickens had 93 receptions last year. He had 1,429 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. From a yardage perspective, he was ranked 3rd overall. So again, this is a number 1 wide receiver type player. He's young. He's 24 years old. He's athletic. He has all the intangibles. He's probably one of the best go up and get it catchers in the NFL right now. He makes circus catches game after game. And so, again, who are some viable options for George Pickens? There's a couple names that come to mind. Some of them I think people probably haven't necessarily thought of yet. The number 1 on my list for George Pickens to go to is actually the Kansas City Chiefs. It was blatantly obvious last year that the Chiefs struggled without having solid weapons at the wide receiver positions. They're most likely going to be losing Travis Kelce to retirement, and if they don't, he's probably going to have an even lesser of a year this next upcoming year. I struggle to believe he's going to be able to maintain even the numbers he had this past year. It just gets harder and harder as age goes on. So we'll see what happens, but number 1 choice for me for George Pickens to go to right now would actually be the Kansas City Chiefs. Another team that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about when it comes to George Pickens landing spots could actually potentially be the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are dealing with a quarterback that's on a rookie deal. They don't really have a lot of money tied up in their offense currently. And so that is actually a really good fit for them to be able to spend money on a really solid weapon that could really change things for this Broncos team, get them back into that AFC championship, and have another chance at going to a Super Bowl. Again, so the Chiefs and the Broncos are probably my two top options when it comes to George Pickens. With our number 3 free agent this upcoming year, we're switching over to the defense. Devin Lloyd, the linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Devin Lloyd, probably what he excelled in the most this past year was actually interceptions. He had 5 interceptions on the year. I think there was one game where he actually ended up having 3 interceptions. He had 35 solo tackles and 1.5 sacks on the year as well. But this is an athletic, versatile linebacker that could play in the dime as well as just be a 3-down linebacker for really any team. When it comes to where I actually think he fits best, I actually thought it would be continuing to stay with Jacksonville. I've heard some rumors that he's most likely moving on from this organization. And so for me, a team that he would probably work best with is actually the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked again about how bad their defense was this past year. And so getting a linebacker like Devin Lloyd will be able to help out not only in the run, but also in the pass defense. Having a versatile linebacker like that can really help you out. They have linebackers like Logan Wilson, but again, they need to have a little bit more versatility in that position, and I think Devin Lloyd would be a really good fit from that perspective. Another spot where he actually could be a good fit, and maybe this is a little bit crazy, it's called Bad Takes for a reason, so give me some grace here, but I actually think he might even be a good fit with the San Francisco 49ers. Everyone is probably saying, what about Fred Warner? I am not saying do anything with Fred Warner. I think Fred Warner is there to stay. But I also, at the same time, think that you probably want to have another talented young linebacker back there that can really add some depth and add some, versatility to your defense, especially with the amount of injuries that happen to this team year after year. At a certain point, availability is the best ability, and so you need to have someone available back there in order to maintain the level of defense you need, especially in the NFC West. So again, between the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers, if Devin Lloyd doesn't end up staying with the Jaguars, which I'm hearing he's not, I think that's his best landing spot. The number 4 free agent in for this 2026 offseason is center for the Baltimore Ravens, Tyler Linderbaum. Tyler Linderbaum is a staple of the offensive line for the Baltimore Ravens right now, and sadly, probably the only hope moving forward for this line. They do have Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. They gave him an extension last year, and he played, I would say, so-so this year. It wasn't his best year whatsoever. He didn't have any major injuries, though, and so he was still available for most of the games. But they really need to maintain some sort of continuity on that offensive line, because I'm expecting both guards to be replaced for this Ravens offensive line. So if you have to replace your center as well, who is an all-pro center, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you're Baltimore. This is the one free agent where I look at it and say it makes so much sense for them to re-sign him. I do know that they did try to give him a contract extension prior to this season starting, and they were apparently nowhere even close to the number that Tyler was expecting. And so that is one cause for concern. The good news for the Baltimore Ravens is the fact that it is reported that there is going to be the largest hike in the salary cap ever in the history of the NFL coming this offseason. So that might be able to give them the funds available in order to pay Tyler Linderbaum. If he doesn't end up there, when you look at teams that struggle with offensive line, Baltimore Ravens are probably number 1 on my list. But you can also look at teams like the Bengals, who can't keep Joe Burrow healthy. There's a lot of options for Tyler Linderbaum. There's probably 4, maybe 5 teams that wouldn't be willing to get a center like a Tyler Linderbaum if they had the ability to get to him. And so again, for me, my prediction, I think he stays with Baltimore. There's no chance they have any sort of room to let him go. They just cannot let Tyler Linderbaum go. So for me, the number 4 free agent, Tyler Linderbaum, I expect to stay with Baltimore. I think he's going to get franchise tagged and at a minimum, and if not, signed to an extension. The number 5 free agent for the 2026 offseason is Jamel Dean, the cornerback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dean is a stat stuffer. He had 2 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, and 9 passes defensed on the season. This is a 29-year-old cornerback who has the size at 6'1", 200 plus pounds, has the range, has the skills. I think any team would be lucky in order to get a player like a Jamel Dean. He is one of those players that I truly do expect this Buccaneers team to re-sign, and to re-sign him as quickly as possible. Their defense was absolutely abysmal last year. The Buccaneers did everything they could from an offensive perspective in order to try to put points up on the board. They constantly, in the beginning of the season, had amazing runs and fourth quarter drives at the end of games to win games. It just ended up catching up to them by the end of the season. They really, again, they can't afford to lose someone like a Jamel Dean. And so I hate to be boring, but I really do think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a great fit for Jamel Dean to stay and, again, sign a long-term deal. Some other teams that might be a good fit, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders pass defense really struggled mightily this year, and they go up against some of the top receivers week in, week out. And so I really do think if the Las Vegas Raiders are trying to turn things around, getting a cornerback like a Jamel Dean would be a huge aspect of that. Those are my top 5 free agents going into the offseason. Let me know what you think. Where do you think these players are going to go? That's it for me today. Thank you again for watching. This is Bad Takes with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.